alternative technologies and energy sources available to allow them to develop sustainably. To help developing nations take responsibility, climate finance must be resolved in the negotiations this week and become a core element of the Copenhagen Agreement. Today, you can applaud money for anybody. Today, there is really no excuse for America not to act when we account for just 5% of the world's population, but 20% of its emissions. By the very same token, when 97% of new emissions over the next 2 decades will come from the developing world, that is more than an inconvenient truth in our larger struggle. It is a core issue. By 2020, China's emissions will be 40% larger than America's. It is inescapable that ultimately the only workable way forward is a global solution where all major emitters take on binding commitments. The developing world, I might say also, is making enormous progress. China has committed to a 40 to 45% carbon intensity reduction. Brazil has pledged a remarkable 80% cut in its all-important emissions from deforestation. And India, too, has broken new ground with an offer to cut its emissions intensity by about 20 to 25%. Now, obviously, some people would like to see that be more. And yes, these commitments have to be part of an international agreement. But the fact is, these countries' decisions to join in announcing targeted reductions represents an historic breakthrough, and they deserve our applause for getting this far and breaking with the framework that had previously been agreed to and voluntarily doing so. And in America, we are also making progress. Every day, we are building support in the Senate in a difficult political climate and difficult economic time. But we're building it across the political spectrum. Lindsey Graham, a conservative Republican senator from South Carolina, has become a trusted partner. Senator Robert Byrd of West Virginia, who wrote the amendment that effectively ended U.S. participation in Kyoto, who has championed American coal for 50 years, said just this month, I quote, "To deny the mounting science of climate change is to stick our heads in the sand and say, 'Deal me out.' West Virginia would be much smarter to stay at the table." Well, 12 years after the Byrd-Hagel amendment, we finally have Robert Byrd at the table. The 2 key Senate committees have already advanced major proposals to the Senate floor. And the leader of the Senate, Harry Reid, has stated publicly, as has the President, that we will take this on early next spring. So let me say to all of you who are wondering about whether or not we will pass something, first of all, what happens here in Copenhagen is critical to our ability to be able to do so. There's a synergy here. And once we have done so, our ability to be able to provide additional financing to the less developed countries and to do what we need to do to develop will change automatically. There's an enormous synergy connection. With a successful deal here in Copenhagen, we can make this happen. But let me emphasize, those who say we will not pass something are wrong. Next year, I tell you, next year, the United States Congress, House and Senate, will pass comprehensive energy climate legislation that will reduce America's emissions. And although we have yet to reach a full agreement on the method, more and more businesses and more legislators are becoming convinced that the only way to meet an emissions reduction target is to price carbon.